what I'd like to do today, I'd like to share some thoughts entitled Build an Ark. Build an Ark. I found this interesting as I was searching for the word, which I normally do. The word ark. I'm going to go back sitting. I started searching for the meaning of the word ark. And I was surprised that every place I looked up the word ark, every dictionary, when you go online, you have dictionary.com, you have Merriam-Webster, Colleen, um, Oxford. The big names are there. Every dictionary that I went to find the meaning of the word ark. No, I never started my recording piece here. Huh? Nelson, that's it. Um, but anyway, so back to the point I was making. As I was searching for this word ark, um, every every place I went, they all pointed back to the Bible. Every place I went, they all pointed back to the Bible as the source of the word and the idea. They talked about Noah's Ark and they talked about the Ark of the Covenant, right? And I found it. I felt somewhat elevated as a believer in the Bible, as not being an atheist, but I felt so good in my spirit. It's almost like when I was studying the issue of the Sabbath and the word week. Nobody has an explanation for the week excepting. I remember back in the days, we never had online, nothing at all. We never had no online. We had libraries. And when I went to Encyclopedia Britannica, it says that there's no other explanation for a week of 7 days except the Bible being the source. So it felt so good that here are some issues that nobody has any clue about this excepting the Word of God. And so going back to Ark, I found one place that when it came down to like the third meaning, the third line, number 3, it says that, and it was in the Collins dictionary. It says that an ark is a place or thing offering shelter or protection, right? And that was the only place that I actually could find something that actually says, okay. So in my own words, I would my own understanding of the issue is that an ark is a place of safety. Other places you say the ark is a box, and it would all be referring back to the Ark of the Covenant or Noah's Ark. So it could be a box or a boat. Okay. Now, so that's what I want us to look at today. Build an ark. Now, what I think is important is to go back to the reason why it was first commanded to build an ark. What was the reason? What was the reason that God commanded the building of the ark? And hopefully, if we can go back and examine the conditions that existed at that time, we can compare what happened then with our time and to see if really and truly we're living in similar days and need to make similar to make some similar actions, which is to build an ark. So first, I'd like for us to go back to Genesis 6 is actually the place where the record of this is. I'm going to do something for you that I don't normally do. I'm going to read a couple of verses for you quickly, and because I want to set a premise, and then we'll come back and highlight a few things. Is that all right? So go with me to Genesis chapter 6. I normally would like for all of us to read together, but then sometimes I get half of the class reads faster than half, and so we don't get a uniformity. But if you can read along with me at my pace, then just go ahead. So Genesis chapter 6 is where I like to go, and I'm going to start in verse 1. I'm going to take maybe the first 12 or 13 verses, and because I want to paint a picture. Remember, we're dealing with what now? Build an ark. All right, so it starts in verse 1, and here's what it says. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the earth, on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, Sorry about that.
Let me
Let's go to verse 2. Let's start again. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were what now? Fair. And they took them wives of all which they chose. Mark that phrase, I'm coming back to it. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also that after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repenteth the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generation. And Noah walked with God. And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark. Interesting. We'll stop there. We leave it there. Make thee an ark. So what was the reason? What was the reason for the making of the ark? The fact that all flesh was corrupt, the fact that all of the things that were taking place on the earth were taking place. Let's do a review of the things that we just looked at. In the review, I want us to examine a few things, because I do believe that that even especially in this passage, when we're going to come to verse 4, there are men, there are almost every preacher today, and the big names like Tom Horn and the like, men of his caliber, has drawn their conclusions from the same passage we just read, and we're going to examine it. I'm probably going to mention it as well, and we'll see if this is really the truth of what we just read. Now, the first point I recognize, what I want to make is that it seemed to suggest that men began to multiply. Men began to multiply, and as men multiplied, it does say women were born to them, right? So there seemed to be an increase in women, right? And a what? Well, it would seem so. If you listen to the statistics today, they say there are more women on the earth today than there are men, and there are more children than there are women. I mean, almost similar to what they said in coining the in trying to put a number to the crowd that sat at Jesus' feet on the mount. Remember, the record says that there were 5,000 men beside women and children. And if you listen to this, they actually said that in meetings like this, you'd always have twice the amount of women than you have men, and twice the amount of children than you have women. So they say it's 5,000 men, and it's 10,000 women, and it's 20,000 children, right? So that's kind of a how. But anyway, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, why did the phrase come in? I'm trying to look at things just based on what I'm reading. 2, I see that the spirit of evil increased because it was Adam's life that was being multiplied. Adam's life without God was being multiplied, being passed on, and so the spirit of evil is more. The third thing is what it mentions when it talks about the sons of God. It says the sons of God there, but who are these sons of God? Who are these sons of God? And it also said something in that verse, that they chose they chose them wives of all whom they pleased. Now you might not see it in that verse, but I'm suggesting to you that that one phrase is telling a whole lot of stories behind it. They chose wives of all whom they please. Does that mean that they were choosing wives, that men were choosing wives as men? Does that mean that women were choosing wives as women? Does that mean, look, if it's not saying this, how does it reach to the place that God is so offended by the behavior that he says, I did not create man to be this way? How is it that in his own heart he was grieved than when he looked at what man has become? If it's just that godly men were marrying heathen women, that godly men were actually marrying other people. Is that it? So I want you to see something in the perspective of that phrase. Is it possible that that men were also choosing wives from animals? Is it possible? I'm just saying, look at the phrase, because we're dealing with a condensed version. How do you describe the entire thing that was happening in the days of Noah and fit it into 12 verses? How do you do that? Excepting you give a phrase like this, that these men chose wives of all whom they chose wives of all whom they what is chose? Please, they chose. So I'm just saying, what is that? What is he suggesting here? What is Moses saying when he wrote this book? I want you to think about that a little bit as we keep going. Now, is it a hot point that you need to say something? All right, so I'm coming to verse 4 shortly, probably about now. Anyway, so what was the reason for their choosing? Yeah, brother Vin, and I'd rather that we keep the comments still. So go ahead quickly with that comment, and then very well, and I agree. I agree as well. We don't have the full details of it, except even well. Let me finish this first, and I'll come back to that. What Jesus said about the days of Noah. Anyway, so here's a perspective. Now it says, first of all, it says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair. Our other translation says that they were beautiful. What does that mean? It means that women were dressing in a certain way to show up themselves. We see that today. We see that almost people are almost naked on the road. Just think about what was going on here. They were luring the sons of God in such a way that they were dressing in I mean, we think like miniskirt and so on was bad when I was younger, right? Miniskirt, and man, anybody that wears a miniskirt is not a Christian. But today, miniskirt is the norm. You see what I'm saying? Miniskirt is the norm. Even among Christians, miniskirt is the norm. But just think about how these people, these young women, used to dress in a sexy way with their shapely bodies, dressed in in all manners to attract the young innocent men, arousing their sensual emotions. And I think this is really along the point of what was taking place. Now, as we go on, and as we look at these things, and I'm looking at the time, I'm race against the time, but a few people have been talking about the speed of my speed talk, and so I necessarily need to slow down. So I will do that, and this might actually warrant a part two, which is not a problem. Anyway, so let's get down to that verse 4. So we're looking at verse 4 where it says, and there were giants in the earth in those days. Now, all of these scholars that I've heard look at that verse, they say, the word giants comes from the root word Nephilim. And so they say the Nephilims in those days, the giants in those days, were as a result of the rest of the verse. So they said in those days, these giants were hybrids. These giants were fallen angels mating with human women. Think about what is being said. And there might be people in here that believes that. There might be people watching online that believes that, because that is basically all that you have heard of this passage. And when you listen to somebody like Tom Horn and others, they speak with authority that this is what Nephilim mean. That's what Nephilim is. Now, I don't have any authority, and I don't have anything about me to say anything than I can research. I was watching a comedian talk about people don't research, and he says, back in the days, people would research. And he says, so what is this big thing about research? What is research? And he said, it simply means to read. And then he said, so you know why people don't research today? They don't read. That's the truth, right? Many people don't read. I mean, I realize some people are even more apt to listen than to read. But he said, back in the days when somebody says, I'm going to research something, you're going to read up on it, right? And is that what we do today when we say research? Anyway, so I can read and I can look at things. And so when I look at what I am looking at, I've seen something that I want to bring to your attention. The word that is used, and I won't even attempt to call the word and what the Hebrew word, but I'll tell you what the word means, and you can check this out yourself. You can get a lexicon, you can look at it. You can get Strong's Concordance if that's what you have, and you can look at it. The word that is used, the word Nephilim, the word that is used there is, I'll tell you what it means. It means, the word means a fella that is a bully or a tyrant, giant. That's what the word means. Now, if you check a few translations, you'll also find that they will use the word tyrant instead of giants in those days, because and they were tyrants in those days. In other words, there were people in those days that were boastful and they were known. In our days, don't we have those kinds of people? We have tyrants in every area. We have tyrants in government. We have tyrants in education. We have tyrants in whatever sphere that you can think about. There are tyrants in those. Are giants, you can say they are giants, right? Because they excel in their field, and that's what makes them a tyrant or a giant, based on what the word says. So it says that they were giants in those days, and also that when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, that they bear children unto them. Back in my days, listening to some people called theologians, they used to say there was something that is called the law of first mention. And maybe nobody here don't even have a clue of what I'm talking about, and maybe a few people might, right? So the law of first mention, and he says that they say that the law of first mention, whenever this word, phrase, whatever is used first, then it should be the same right throughout. Okay. Now the phrase, let me tell you something about the phrase, and this is something you can do yourself. The phrase "the sons of God" is used about 11 times in the entire Bible. 11 times. Nowhere in the Word of God does the sons of God refer to angels or fallen angels or any angels for that matter. In fact, if you should say, but what about Job chapter 1? I would say, who were the sons of God that were present in Job chapter 1? Who were they? Okay, we know that Satan came as a representative of the earth. So the most we can say that the sons of God referred to in Job chapter 1 were other worlds that were represented. Other worlds so I would think Adam would have represented earth when the sons of God came, when God called a meeting of the sons of God. But since Adam sold out his birthright to Satan, then Satan had a right to represent earth. You see what I'm saying? But you can check this out yourself. The sons of God have, what is the reference to angels in the Bible? I'll tell you what it is. They're called ministering spirits. Now you can challenge what I'm saying. It's not a problem. They're called ministering spirits. That's who they are. Now, 1. 2, the next point is angels are genderless. So you don't have male angels and female angels. Angels are genderless. But third, and I think the most important of all, is the principle of reproduction, the principle that was set in the creation by God himself. What is the principle of reproduction? It is this: each produces how? After its kind. So that is why a goat cannot produce with a dog. That is why a cat cannot produce with a monkey, because it's not the same kind. But a zebra, a donkey, a horse, a mule. Well, I know a mule is a product of a horse and a donkey. But I'm just saying, when you think about same kind, you understand why a dog can mate with all these different dogs and produce different kinds, right? So I want you to see and understand. Look, you all, for the from the beginning, from the days of Noah until now, you have men who have been committing bestiality. The men who have, we say lay with, but don't lay, right? Men who have had I'm trying to be right, have had relations, good word, with animals, and they have never produced, right? I mean, in Jamaica we'd call them different names, whether we say donkey man or whatever, you know, right? So that's it, right? Coleman, whatever it is. So I'm just saying this does never happen. So I'm suggesting to you, brothers and sisters, that you don't have to be a scholar. You just have to be logical in thinking about what you're saying. If people are telling you that angels cohabited, and you know how many people believe this? That angels, fallen angels, cohabited with women back in the days of Noah and produced giants in the land. It's not true. Just go and examine this on your own, and you'll see that it is not true. You don't have to listen to. Okay, yes. So you don't have to listen to these these so-called scholars, telling you that the Greek says and what it means. You can check it out too, and you can see that it is not so. So we're going to put a no against this. That these what we're looking at. Remember, these men were closest to Adam. Think about this. Do you think that these men were brilliant? But look at this. You know what? In school, I realized that they give us the reverse of what you look at in the Bible. What they give us in school is that we are seeing nomads, and we're seeing ancient men who had no sense, men that were like more like monkeys, came together, and so they lived in ancient time. Their methods was different. They couldn't do certain things and so on. But it's not true. It's not. Archaeologists are unearthing things right now that are amazing them. That men who lived in the there was a brother who used to work with us. I won't say his affiliation, but one day he was talking to me, and I thought this guy could be a little funny fellow, because he said to me, he said back in ancient time, Howard, men used to make better planes and better helicopters and better and I'm thinking that, I'm listening to him, right, and I'm amused at the things that he's saying. But then I realized that he's probably right. He's probably right that I mean, maybe planes were far lower than their caliber of making things and the ways to move about and so on, right? I mean, they're today unearthing things that it seemed like things like anti-gravitational transport was there, that people could just move freely around without um, engines and so on, right? Because of the understanding of electromagnetism, electricity, and light. I think that's what Tesla says, that those three things combined. But I'm telling you, this is the perspective we have, that we are man. Well, in school, that's what they taught us, that we came from a one-cell amoeba, and through evolution and over years and hundreds of millions of years, we eventually came to man, Homo sapiens, man, the wise one. And that's the perspective that we have. So when we should think back on what happened back in the days, we're saying that technology was at a no. But look at what we have. We have the seven ancient wonders of the world. We have the pyramids of Egypt. We have what? We have the pyramids of Egypt that today still baffles the science. And look, there's somebody once showed how that they had these stones like 100 tons that were lifted up and placed at a certain height. And they say there's no crane available today in the 21st century. There's not one crane that can lift 100 tons. How is that possible? Well, you know what they do? They say it's UFO. That's what they do. What you do is, when you can't explain something, you say it's most demons help them, right? Instead of thinking that these people were far more advanced in the things that they were doing. I was watching a documentary that they were saying that mortar. You know how that we use cement, right? They said the mortar that they used to hold these things, they were cut with such precision that the mortar was as thin as a book leaf. And they said that mortar that holds that together, when they try to chip away, it damages the stone and not the mortar. So I mean, what do you say? I mean, because you know what we read that in the days of in the land of Shinar, that they use slime for mortar, right? And we think of the worst thing that we can ever think of to say what is slime, right? But that slime was something, and that building would have gone, I mean, farther than we think it would have gone, except God had stepped in and confounded the language, right? Because of the technology that existed. So I'm just saying, come out of that perspective to think that these men were little dwarfs. You can't compare yourself to them. These men knew how the power of their brain and what to, because God made them that way. See what I'm saying? So they were closer to Adam than we are. So they were far wiser. They were far more able to do the things that they did. I mean, we look at the word of God and it says that Tubal-Cain and Jubal-Cain made harp and it made strings and so on, right? And did you say piano or organ? Organ, I think, right? And so we're thinking, okay, how did they invent that? We're thinking in ancient times, and we're trying to think, okay, so they probably got a piece of tinning or something. When we were young, we used to use sardine cans and so on with fish line to make guitar and make sounds. And so in our minds, we try to think that's what these men were doing, but it's not true. These men were naturally brilliant, and so when you have a society that is this good with their mind, just think if it turns to evil, how far advanced and how much that would escalate at an exponential level. You see what I'm saying? That's what would have happened. And that's what I want you to see as we look at the days of Noah and as we talk about the things that are recorded here, as it relates to the the increase of iniquity that the Word of God talks about here. So one point of interest is also what God said, that He says that all flesh has corrupted his ways. All flesh. Now, man, I tell you, when I look at the implication of this, I'm thinking there's some things I can't even say because of fear for censorship and so on. When you look at this, you'd like to give justice to what you're looking at when you come to examining our day as it relates to Noah's day. So first of all, there is that perspective of mercy that it says that God says his day shall be 120 years. Okay, which suggests that what he was simply saying is that man would have had 120 years since he told Noah to build an ark. Is that making sense? All right. So I see the same perspective when I look at what Jesus says, that when you see the sign of the end, he says that generation shall not pass. So the amount of generations that have passed, we know that sign did not come, because he says once that sign appears, once that sign, that specific thing that he mentioned that we are to look for, which is the abomination of desolation, which is that that abomination that sitting in the place that it should not be, or sitting in the holy place. He says once this happens, he says that generation shall not pass. It's interesting because it's when you look at the generation and you look at what happens here, and just the timing of as it relates to the word of God, the timing of it, you realize that it is far less than a generation. Because look, by the time the two witnesses are empowered, and we were talking about this morning, by the time the two witnesses are empowered, how long are they given? 60 days. So you look at this and you realize, so they are empowered, but when are they empowered? They are empowered in sackcloth. They're empowered at a time when mourning is on the earth. They're empowered at a time when a time of affliction such as never was is being experienced. A time of tribulation such as never was is being experienced. A time of trouble such as never was is being experienced. They are empowered in that time, and a specific time, for 3.5 years. And look at what it says next. It says of the abomination of desolation, that from the time that the abomination of desolation is set up, that the daily is removed and the abomination of desolation is set up, is 1290 days. Just look at that. And what we're looking at when I talk about the 1290 days, we're looking at not a symbolic prophetic book or chapter, but we're looking at literal days. We're looking at literal days of 1290 days in Revelation chapter 12, which there's no symbolism employed. This is as Revelation and Daniel, sorry, did I say Revelation? Daniel 11 and Daniel 12 are all not non-symbolic books. They're all literal applications, right? So I'm just suggesting to you that as we look at this, and as we turn the searchlight back over to our time and look at the things that are happening in our days, what is it that we're seeing? Because I'm going to show you also that when he talks about the days of Noah, you know what we think? Look at what we think. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. So here's what happened in the days of Noah. They were eating and drinking, and we think that's just normal living. They were planting and building. What is they were planting? What were they planting? In the days of Noah, what were they planting? You see what I'm saying? So what we try to do is try to say, okay, eating and drinking, that's a normal way of life. So they were just living normally when the end of the time was near. That is true. But could it be that there were other things that they were involved in, that there were other things that they were eating and drinking? You see what I'm saying? Could it be that there are things that we have not looked at when it is necessary to examine what was being fed, what was being fed to the that generation? What is that being fed to the generation that they were eating and drinking? Man, what if I went around to cell phones? Let's say I talk about the cell phones. What is that you're eating and drinking on your phone? What is that you're eating and drinking in your entertainment? You know what I'm saying? But you're saying, no, brother Howard, I think you're pushing it too far. Probably, right? But is there a possibility that those things are also being referred to and we're not seeing them, and we're just putting it as just saying eating and drinking, and we're building houses and so on? Is that what he's talking about, or is there more? Anyway, let's get around to our day. Is the world today, here's my question, is the world today turning away from God? Right, because what we're seeing is that these people back then had no regard for God. It's obvious that it says of them, Moses wrote that the imaginations of their heart was evil continually. All right, only evil. All right, so if this is so, can we say, but I heard you all this morning saying about the things that you're seeing in the world today. Can we say that this is true of our day, that the imagination of the heart is continually evil? When you look around you, when you look around the people around you, your neighbors, your friends, in your community, when you look around, do you see that there's an increase in evil? That is evil. I mean, we talked about how people had no fear, had fear for God at the beginning, but today that there's no fear, that they will go to a church in session and rob. I mean, we remember that this guy went to a fasting over there in Falmouth, and they were kneeling down to pray, and he pulled his gun and shot the woman, right? And so we're saying that there's no fear of God anymore, and I wonder why that is so. I wonder why we have no more fear of God. Could it be that people have found out that these hypocrites that are called pastors? I heard Brother Vincent talk about these pastors, and yet we fail to recognize that what Paul says is not pastors that are in the pulpits, but who, according to Paul? Huh? Yeah, what he says that is in First Corinthians 11, is it 11? Yes, that that the devil himself is transformed into an angel of light, and his ministers are also transformed into angels of light. So we are thinking that because this person stands up front and speaks and is eloquent, that makes him a child of God or a man of God. It's not true, right? But and I'm not even suggesting that you had much of those people back in those days, because I think what the word of God is saying is that there's a corruption that came. The sons of God, the lineage of Seth became corrupt by intermingling with the heathens around, right? And we're seeing a similar thing happening here. So my question then is the world turning away from God? And we're all saying what? Yes. Now I'm telling you, I think what we're finally seeing the consequences of what has been in years coming, right? The consequences of taking God out of school, right? I mean, you think about something like this. I remember when we were going to school, we'll always have morning devotions. There probably are a few schools left. Well, maybe in a third world country, Sister Diane. In a third world country like Jamaica, there are still schools here that do have devotions in the morning, where all the student body comes out, and they have a song, they have a reading, and they pray, right? I guess this is not something that in first world countries, these things don't happen, right? But I'm saying this has been long taken out of school. Commandments have been removed. God has been removed. Worship has been removed. All of these things have been removed. And logically, this is what you say. If you allow for Christianity to be in school, you should allow for Islam and all the others. Isn't that true? Which is a fair statement, right? But if it's a Christian country, then there's a difference. See what I'm saying? That makes a difference. Okay. Now, so I'm saying what we're seeing today, the violence in schools, the killings in schools, and all of that is a consequence of what has been in the plan years in advance, which means they have been removing God from school, removing God from society, and this is the consequence. Now, the same thing is true even with us and our young people. If we are not careful, our young people being exposed to certain things causes them to become like their peers, right? The peer pressure causes them to fall in certain categories, right? Um, I was saying something to my children about somebody that they knew, and I was saying that I was saying of that person that how cunning the person was, how cunning the person was, because you can be cunning. You can say what people want to hear, right? You let's say you know what some people. Let's say you come in this congregation and you know what will cause people to think highly of you. You just say that, right? And people will say, "Wow, that is so amazing," right? So if you're a psychologist, and we always say children are the best psychologists, right? If you're a psychologist, you know how to talk to gain and to win. You see what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, because your heart is not there, what is the result? All right. So that's the point I'm making, right? As are we seeing today? Are we seeing blatant sins in the open that nobody dare say or speak against? Our brother Vincent talked about a pastor in Canada who a transgender. Well, a man came dressed as a woman, and the pastor asked him to leave the congregation. He said that, and he said, "Please go home. You're a man. Go home, change, and come back. We have children here. We have people that we don't want this influence in this congregation." And the church turned against the pastor. You see what I'm saying? So the perspective I want you to see is that, but how did we get here? It was not overnight. It was slowly and incrementally that we got to the place where homosexuality is now being taught in schools, but through their textbook in kindergarten schools. And our parents who are Christians still send their children to the school. You tell me what you expect to happen at school. And I told you in the last series I did how my church and pastor told me I must write that man came through evolution. Man came from monkey just to get the grade. But I know that man was created by God, right? And are we not doing the same thing? Are we not doing the same thing today? When we send our children to these institutions and these are the things that are being taught, and then when they turn away from God, when they come and turn away from God, we say, I don't know how they came out to be that like that, because I brought them up in church. And we think that it is the church's ability to change that perspective. We are joking. Who said that? Right, we are joking if that's what we think, that we can send our children out to learn at the feet of these atheists and evolutionists, and then they come out to be atheists and evolutionists, and we say we don't know what happened or what went wrong. Where's the flat that God gave you? What is it? Are parents even interested? I was talking to a lady this week, and she said to me, she said, "How are your children? They're still homeschooled." I said, "My children are far grown. My son is learning a trade, and what did I say of my daughter? I don't remember. She's still at home, right? And and then she's telling me, and she said, I tried my best because when I met you and your wife, I decided I was going to homeschool, and so I homeschooled my girl until she was 6. But then I was under pressure, Mr. Williams. I had to send her out to school. And now at 6 she goes to school and she comes in with these assignments, and that she used to use scissors and knives to cut up. And I said, it can't be my 6-year-old daughter that's getting this. It's my assignment, right? And so she was bemoaning the fact that her daughter's at school from 7:45 and comes home at 2:30 or 3 o'clock or whatever time it was. And for all of that period, what are they doing with her? And then they send her home with all of this homework at 6 years old, right? And I said, well, that's where the programming starts, at 6. And so by the time she reaches high school and ready to go to college, she's fully schooled, because that's what the word means. She's fully programmed in the educational system. So let's get back to this, because what I see happening is and this is something that is going to take over the world. We're seeing it mainly in America and maybe in Germany and maybe in the first world countries. But when you look at this sex education that has been taught to children, then you realize what is going. I mean, if you ever get the chance, you try to go online and find one of these books for kindergarten and see what you're teaching the children to do, and what the things that they can do to each other, and you must accept this as the norm. But you see, they accept it as a norm because the parents are so strapped for time. They're so stressed out, they can't afford to stay home. They can't afford to homeschool. Why? Because they have to make ends meet. They have to be in the rat race. They have to be constantly going on. And I'm telling you that all of this happened in the days of Noah, and that is why things got to where they were. That's the perspective I'm making. Look, how can a 4-year-old child make a decision about his future? How can you give a 4-year-old child, they put that onus on them to make a choice that will affect them right through the rest of their lives? How can you do something like that? 4-year-old? All right, listen to this. I see a little boy going to school in the morning. I was surprised that he was going to school. Anyway, I heard them talking about his age, that he's probably 2 or 3, right? And he's going to school in Pampers. He's going to school in his Pampers, okay? And I'm thinking, what is it that you're doing? And I realized why. I realized why this has to be done is because we don't have plans, and one, two, and we don't know about life. We don't understand life. And these young parents, they don't know anything, right? So they're just following everybody else. They're following everybody else. Vaccination for their children because if you have to do it and your parents said it must be done, right? But I remember when my kids were young, were babies, and my mother asked my wife, they got the vaccination? And my wife said, no. And that time my mother said, don't make me son tell you foolishness, right? Because I think by now my mother knew that maybe I was the influencer. But then my wife says, no. I said, we decided not to do it. And she said, Carlene is your husband influencing you, right? And Carlene said, I don't think Carlene could convince her because she believes that I was the person that said my kids were not to be vaccinated, and that is partly true. I think it was evidences that showed that it was it's not. I mean, even today, a friend of ours did a vaccine, and he said that the child has not been the same since vaccination. Was very sick and is in and out of hospital since vaccination, right? And I don't know how I got after vaccination. Anyway, but I'm just saying, at 4 years old, how can a 4-year-old child? I saw somebody did an experiment recently, and they had a child, 4 years old, said their name, their age, and they placed before the child on the table a pack of Oreo cookies, and 10,000 US dollars cash on the table before a 4-year-old child. And they said to the child, both things are free. This is $10,000. And this is a pack of Oreo cookies. And the child, and he said, which would you choose? Tell me what the 4-year-old chose. Cookies, of course. Oreo cookies. What would you choose, Jerry? All right. And Jerry is more than 4, right? So you look at this, and then the person wrote on the screen, and we are leaving lifetime decisions to 4-year-olds. You see what I'm saying? Right? No, that child has no clue how many billions of Oreo cookies 10,000 US dollars could buy. No clue. They just know cookies. I mean, since the guy, look here, once the guy said the Oreo, and the child was looking at the Oreo. No, but the money, even to say let's say you said a million. Let's say you use a big word. It wouldn't matter because the child has no concept of what a $1 million is. You see what I'm saying? I mean, even me, I was thinking about somebody was saying trillion, and the US debt was almost trillion, right? And I'm thinking, how much is $1 trillion? And I can't fathom in my mind $1 trillion. I can't have a mental concept of it. I can for about a million, and so what a billion you say is 1,000 million. So yes, you probably, right? But a trillion. And I'm saying to you, when you look at our day today, and you see that 4-year-olds are making decisions for life, 4-year-olds are choosing whether or not they want to be a man, a boy, or a girl, which is always the opposite of who they are. Where did that come from? It didn't come from home. When you see a situation where children are being pummeled at school to say, is your mother questioning you about your decisions, or so on? And if they say yes, then guess what? Child service, and your child is gone. What kind of world are we living in, brothers and sisters? I want you to see that we are looking. Would you say that is worse than the days of Noah? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what is going on? Because when you look at this, the perspective of somebody said something. Woe unto to you when a woman shall rule over you and a child shall become you, or something. I don't remember. Who remember that verse? I think is Jeremiah, maybe Jeremiah 17 or something like that. Anyway, you know the verse. Anybody remember the verse? Right. But it almost seemed like he was saying that yes. Right. Well, forget that. Whatever the verse says. Right. But I want you to see then. I want you to see that the what we are giving our children, what we are allowing our children to do, it will lead. I mean, I remember some children being given the choice. What is it that you want to eat? What you want today? Man, I remember even in my own family that sometimes at hours of the night that a child will get up and say they want burger or want Kentucky. And you have to get up and drive, go get it. No, it's not crazy. It's just reality. I'm telling you. And I realize in situations like that, why children comes out how they are, because they grow up feeling entitled. They grew up feeling entitled because of how they were brought up. I'm telling you, right? And I mean, I guess there are many people who criticize my method of parenting. I have no problem with that. You look at my children, and you'll see what my method of parenting has produced. My method of parenting has produced enough that I might not even be in the island, and things need to be done, and it is not done because they have to wait until they get through to me if I'm in another country and the time zone is different, right? And they say, Daddy, mommy says she can't make decisions on this. You can make decisions on this. We are not even at home, my wife and myself. And if my kids need to do something, they call. Can we go here and do this? Fine. She's sending them out to do something. She's sending them out at some function or social or sometime. She says, you'll be home by this time, right? And so often KK would call and say, we're in a game and it's not finished yet. Can we get 10 minutes more? And you know that if you have been around them, they'll have to call normally to get a consent from home that yes, I can stay 10 minutes more or so on, right? And what that's what I'm saying. Even though I'm talking about, even though that thing happens, even though. So I'm suggesting to you that the reason why children are the way they are is really how they were brought up. Their parenting, their parents did not do a good job, and because they didn't do a good job, I mean, normally when I was growing up, my father would use his eyes, and with his eyes, he tells me to shut up and sit down and promise of something to come later. With his eyes, he can look at me, and you know certain looks. And look here, if daddy look at me certain ways, for the rest of the day, I try to be a saint. If I see a certain look, I know, say, all right, straighten up yourself and be quiet. Okay? But if you get a certain look, there is promise of something later. Especially if he uses his finger and do like this. From the pulpit. That's what I'm telling you, from the pulpit, because he's always on the pulpit. And if he looks and if he goes like this, it's coming. So I'm suggesting to you that children are the new generation that we're seeing is really going to be the soar of the future. And I'm so happy that the future is not so long off, that there's no much future left in this world. I'm so happy that I'm so happy that God is going to finish this quickly and cut it short in righteousness. Is that the word we use? That He will cut it short in righteousness. All right. Now, so the plan of the enemy. Here's my point. The plan of the enemy. Oh, I got my time signal, right? All right. So let me wrap it up here, and we'll take it up from here next week. So the plan of the enemy. Make a note of this. The plan of the enemy, brothers and sisters, is to corrupt the image of God in man. That's the plan of the enemy, is to corrupt the image of God in man. And it begins from a baby. So when a child gets up to the place of wanting to put on tattoos and things like that, it's coming from somewhere. But we'll take it up next week. We'll look at it next week and show you how this image of God is being marred in humanity. And that's the plan of the enemy. And you're going to I'm going to try to tie it all to bring it around to the issue of the mark of the beast. Well, not the mark of the beast, but the issue of the great test in the end and what the great test is going to be about, right? All right, I think that's some good advice there, to build an ark for all of us to contemplate, an ark to save our sons and daughters and our neighbors and our brothers and all of our family. It's time that we be looking at that. Next week we'll explore that reality of the ark some more and what the ark is in our time and age. All right. Thank you so much for your time and company, brothers and sisters. We really appreciate being with you today and looking forward to seeing you next week.